Mitchell came across as a mature and tough guy.
Really?
Yes. I didn't see much of him, but what I saw, he impressed me. And compared to these lacquered, selfish little bastards like Magruder and Dean, at least you could see why Mitchell wasn't a top job.
What did I do? Cut off 2 arms. Oh, who the hell else was going to do that? Who has done that before? They cut off 2 arms and they went after the body.
When you consider the massive things you had done for the country.
Sometimes you can't compromise. So we'll have a constitutional crisis. If we do, it will be a goddamn ding-dong battle.
On the anniversary of the Watergate break-in, Jeb Magruder began his testimony.
I don't think anybody sat around, at least I didn't, thinking about doing unethical, illegal activities. But when things did come up, even though you knew they were wrong, well, it was the President of the United States, it was John Ehrlichman, Bob Haldeman, and therefore you were many times willing to sort of ignore what was going on. My approach was, well, this is not important, and I'm not going to worry about it. Yes, it's illegal. I knew it was illegal, unethical. But I said, well, it's great working here in the White House, and so on.
Yes, sir. Magruder would tell the committee the decision to fund illegal espionage was a throwaway decision, a small item in a busy meeting of the top men in the campaign.
Mr. Magruder, I'm not clear in my mind about who originated the idea of the clandestine intelligence operation and when that was done.
Well, Mr. Liddy was brought over to me at the committee in December, and I was told that he would handle our intelligence gathering operations by Mr. Dean. He indicated that Mr. Mitchell had approved this. We did not discuss in detail in that meeting what these operations would be.
When called before the Senate committee, Gordon Liddy had taken advantage of his rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution. He chose to remain silent.
The first I had any indication of what Liddy was doing in the intelligence gathering business over the re-election committee was when Jeb Magruder called me and said, Liddy is going to have his first meeting with John Mitchell, who was still Attorney General and hadn't come over to run the campaign, and he's going to present his intelligence plans to Mitchell. He said, maybe you should go over as well, since you've got the White House responsibility for this stuff.
John Dean called me about Gordon Liddy coming over to work for us. I didn't know him. He came over. I found him personally very unpleasant and not somebody I would normally have hired. And clearly, he had been told when he left the White House to prepare a plan to elevate dirty tricks to a different level.
And I went over to what was one of the most amazing meetings I've ever attended, any time, any place. Gordon Liddy had an easel set up. He proceeds to present his intelligence plans through these charts that he's put on the easel that are all in code names. And he is calling for things like a chase plane being a smaller jet aircraft that would fly around an opposing candidate's plane and intercept ground-to-air communication.
Could you give us, to your best recollection, what some of these projects were?
There was, of course, the projects including wiretapping, electronic surveillance, and photography. There were projects relating to the abduction of individuals, particularly members of radical groups. We were concerned about the convention in San Diego.
Liddy said, well, I've got a solution to that, General, as he referred to Mitchell. He said, I actually have available the services of some highly trained men who are experienced in kidnapping, and they will kidnap the leaders of the anti-war movement take them below the Mexican border, drug them, and put them out of commission during the time that the convention is being held in San Diego, so they won't be a threat at all.
And that they would then be returned to this country at the end of the convention. He had another plan which would have used women as agents to work with members of the Democratic National Committee and at their convention and here in Washington, and hopefully through their efforts they would obtain information from them.
He had a plan for gathering intelligence at the Democratic Convention by leasing a houseboat, and it would have two-way mirrors and cameras and sound, and they would lure Democratic Party officials into this houseboat where they would get them in a compromising position while they were extolling some prostitute in the secrets of the Democratic Party. And I'm so dumbfounded by what he's saying. I just said, Gordon, you got to be kidding. This isn't even real. And Liddy snaps at me and he kind of looks away over at Mitchell. He said, General, I want to assure you, these are the finest girls from Baltimore. So I just realized this man was on a different wavelength than everybody else.
The president was paying close attention to the Watergate investigation. He told his new chief of staff, Alexander Haig, he knew what was coming next.
They come out with their little boy Dean and all of his jackass things, fine. Yeah, we just slap it with the wrist and let her go.
And a lot of innocent people have been vilified in this thing.
Mm-hmm. They don't realize what they're up against. This stupid Irvin drinking too much and pointing his finger. Huh.
That's right. That's right.
Because one day I'm going to attack that committee, and when I do, it's going to be a blockbuster. I'm going to take it apart like it's never been taken apart.
Exactly.
I really will.
Well, that's the thing to do.
Not yet. I'm going to wait till Dean's on.
Let them get so ripe that
after they're on, after they're about ripe, then I'm going to hit them and destroy them.
The president knew what John Dean knew. He had tapped him to orchestrate the cover-up.
John Dean was probably the premier loyalist to the president.
John W. Dean III.
He not only followed the president's orders and was attempting to suborn perjury of all the witnesses, but he also was a person who began to feel and realize when things might unravel, as he put it.
In the spring of 1973, John Dean had begun talking to Sam Dash in secret meetings, many of them at Dean's house in Alexandria, Virginia.
And he was initially trying to say that I'm not testifying to the president because I was his counsel and that's privileged. But he had already told me that although he had the name counsel, he wasn't counsel. He was a messenger boy. He hardly ever talked to the president, except during these periods. So I said, you don't have that privilege. And so finally, he got into the actual discussions with the president, the $1 million cost that would be to pay off, the cancer on the presidency speech, all of the things that Nixon knew about. And I was driving home, I remember, from Alexandria. It was about 2:30 in the morning. And it struck me that I would be putting on evidence that informed the American people that their president was a criminal. And I started to weep because I didn't vote for Richard Nixon, and I didn't like him as such, but he was our president. And I'm enough of a patriot to not want our president to be depicted that way, both nationally and internationally. And it was a very hard blow.
Made personal use of funds that were in my custody.
The verdict of history could well depend on whether people believed John Dean was telling the truth.
Some of these people I'll be referring to are friends. Some are men I greatly admire and respect. And particularly with reference to the President of the United States, I'd like to say this. It is my honest belief that while the President was involved, that he did not realize or appreciate at any time the implications of his involvement. And I think that when the facts come out, I hope the President is forgiven.
The The stakes were quite clear to Nixon's supporters on the committee.
I will commence with a
I didn't know John Dean, and I had no fixed opinion.